Well, that 21 newcomer video aged very well, so let's make another one. There's a month and a half from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate releasing, and we've been getting more and more newcomer reveals and other tidbits from the game. I made a big list of newcomer predictions sometime after Smash Bros. Was teased for the Switch, and so far, King K. Rool was the only prediction I got right. Woo! But 3 characters I honorably mentioned as honorable mentions, Daisy, Ridley, and now Simon Belmont, made it in, which is pretty funny. So now, I'm gonna retract a number of those predictions and revise/remake that list as my final predictions. Just a heads up, for those of you who saw my last video, Waluigi, Linkle, Impa, Silux, Fire Emblem Guy/Girl, Golfer, Laboman, Sans, Shovel Knight, Bomberman, and Rabbids are all not gonna be in. I'm retracting all of those guys and girls because they either got deconfirmed directly, deconfirmed indirectly, were predicted either for sheer laughs and trolls, were predicted with little thought, or they've been swapped with more favorable predictions. Those 11 predictions have officially gone out the window, and as much as I genuinely want Waluigi to be a DLC fighter and hang on to that tiny tinge of hope, it's likely not going to happen. With half of that list out of the way, here are my final roster predictions for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And just a heads up, that 21 newcomer video was made before Echo Fighters were established, so this paves the way for more predictions. Let's begin. Ever since Richter was revealed alongside Simon as Simon's Echo Fighter and Knuckles the Echidna was confirmed as an assist trophy, I've been sitting here saying on repeat,
"Oh, where is Shadow? Where is Shadow? Where is Shadow? Where can Shadow be?"
I put Shadow the Hedgehog as my dream character on that 21 newcomer prediction list, and I've wanted Shadow in Smash Bros. For over 5 years now. I knew his chances were slim before, but he was the one character I wanted in above all else. The one character I wanted, despite all logic pointing in other directions. But now, it feels so surreal to say he's practically a lock at this point. Sakurai's not afraid of adding multiple characters from a single third-party franchise, as proven with Richter, and Shadow is the most popular Sonic character next to Sonic himself. Besides the fact Shadow was originally made as a literal gameplay clone of Sonic, he'd be such an easy Echo character to make, and even then, he can actually be his own character in much of the same vein as a semi-clone. Everyone who was expecting Isabelle from Animal Crossing in Smash was thinking she'd be an Echo. That wasn't the case, as despite villagers used as a basis for Isabelle, she still has her own moves and proportions that make her her own newcomer. If Shadow was made into a semi-clone in much of the same manner, a lot like for example Dr. Mario, Toon Link, Falco, Wolf, or Pichu are, that'd be the best case scenario for him, and it can definitely work. He can use Chaos Control to the extent of teleportation, or even slowing down time like Bayonetta's down special. He could throw Chaos Spears, use the boost, use various aerials as seen in the Shadow the Hedgehog opening, an infinite cutscene during episode Shadow from Sonic Forces, like his hammer for example. He can use Chaos Boost, Chaos Blast, and of course Super Shadow. They have the tools to make Shadow an original fighter, a very slightly slower but more aggressive version of Sonic, but I think they're just gonna make him an Echo of Sonic since it's the easiest and quickest way to do it, and outside of personality, there's really not a lot of base differences. It's not far off from comparing Pit to Dark Pit, but a semi-clone is not out of the question, especially after Isabelle's reveal. Regardless, Shadow the Hedgehog is gonna be in Smash Bros. Ultimate, and I'm gonna lose my mind. On the topic of original fighters, I think Gino from Super Mario RPG as well as a lock. For those of you who don't know, Gino is one of the main characters you play as from Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, developed by Square Enix. He's this live doll who came to life after getting hit by a falling star, and his only major appearance was in this game. He made a cameo in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, and he got his own Mii costume in Smash 4, but outside of that, Mario RPG is his only playable appearance. But how can someone who's only appeared in one Mario game from over 20 years ago feel like a lock SMT? One main reason is Sakurai's no stranger to adding obscure one-off characters who are decades old now. Ice Climbers only had one game and they were put in Melee when that game was only 15 years old. Same thing could be said for Mr. Game & Watch, who's been irrelevant since the NES was born and was Melee's last newcomer. Rob only has 2 games and Mario Kart DS, yet he was a newcomer in Brawl. Roy didn't even have a game when Melee came out, and he was added alongside Marth to show off Fire Emblem. Better examples, Duck Hunt was a newcomer in Smash 4, which came out in 2014. The game Duck Hunt came out in the mid-80s. Dark Pit has only appeared in one game, yet he's in, Lucas, Shulk, and Ness only appeared in one game. Sakurai was going to reject Pac-Man if he didn't have his classic old arcade design. The argument I'm making here is you don't need multiple appearances in multiple games to be considered for Smash Brothers, and you don't need to be recent to have a better chance. We have characters like Simon Belmont, Ridley, and King K. Rool in Smash Brothers now, characters who have been heavily requested and were insanely popular candidates for practically a decade now. Gino is another one of those characters, and a majority of newcomers in Smash Ultimate is comprised of those fan favorites. Sakurai's also elaborated on how popular Gino was, and he'd be a perfect fit for Smash Brothers since way back in Brawl. It's why he got his own Mii costume in Smash 4, so even Sakurai knows of how popular Gino is, and he agrees he'd be a great fit for Smash. Not to mention, characters with costumes in Smash 4 are newcomers here in Ultimate. The Inklings, Isabelle, Chrom, and King K. Rool were Mii costumes before becoming characters. Gino was the only costume to get Spotlight and Splash Art text, which would come off as one of the biggest costumes, right? The pattern would continue with Gino since we've got 4 now. To add on to how redundant relevancy is, King K. Rool is a staple in Donkey Kong, but he wasn't in a Donkey Kong game for over a decade. The last appearance he made was a Mario spin-off. It's not like King K. Rool was relevant for some time, and he was a hugely popular candidate. The real point I'm making is if a character's popular enough, that's enough to put him or her into Smash. Gino feels secure at this point. Look at Cloud. Final Fantasy left after the SNES era, and Square and Nintendo have had a somewhat rocky history up until the Wii U and 3DS era, particularly with Final Fantasy. Cloud's only appeared in 3 games on Nintendo platforms, being Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories and Recoded on Game Boy, and Theater Rhythm Final Fantasy on 3DS. And all of those appearances, he was either a boss or a supporting character. He was never the main focus or a major vocal point, unlike in Final Fantasy VII. On Nintendo systems, Cloud's always been a minor character, barely striking up many appearances. The thing is, though, Final Fantasy is one of the biggest RPGs out there, and Cloud is not just one of the biggest Final Fantasy characters, he's one of the biggest characters in the entire RPG genre. He is insanely popular and definable when it comes to Final Fantasy and the RPG genre, that in a much broader context, it makes much more sense for him to be in Smash Bros. Not so much when you look at how much history Cloud has with Nintendo, and even then, Cloud's been on a Nintendo system before. Gino only has one major appearance, but he's on such a similar scale of popularity that how frequent or prominent he was isn't gonna matter that much, and he actually did have a major role in Mario RPG, so it's not like prominence is a huge factor if Square Enix is willing to give Gino to Sakurai like they did with Cloud. It's not even like a moveset's impossible either. He could use his Gino Beam, Gino Whirl, Gino Blast, his final smash could be Gino Flash, etc. Sakurai's admitted he'd be perfect for Smash. I don't see any reason not to include Gino at this point, especially when this is the ultimate Smash Brothers. In my previous list, I predicted Dixie Kong, and I still think she's gonna happen as Diddy Kong's Echo Fighter. She's definitely very different from Diddy in terms of capabilities, but like Shadow, using Diddy Kong's template would be more efficient. The only difference she'd probably have is her up special, where it's a lot like Donkey Kong's, and a much better recovery, only dealing a small bit of damage. Regardless, even though King K. Rool made it in, it doesn't seem right to ignore the third biggest and most popular Kong of the crew that's been in plenty of DK games since DKC2. Dixie is almost assuredly going to be Diddy Kong's Echo Fighter, in my opinion. Skull Kid also feels likely. The main villain from Zelda Majora's Mask seems pretty probable for a couple of reasons. One, he's also another popular pick among the Zelda cast. Popularity helps, and he does have a lot, believe it or not. He was an assist trophy in Smash 4, and Little Mac, Dark Samus, and now Isabelle evolved from being assists to playable characters. Skull Kid may get the same treatment. 2, speaking of assist trophies, his assist trophy is nowhere to be found, and the moon from Majora's Mask is an assist trophy now. Much like how it's likely Knuckles took Shadow Spot as an assist, the moon has a good chance of doing the same. I'm not as informed regarding most Zeldas as I am with Ocarina of Time and some of Breath of the Wild, so I'm not sure I know what his moveset could be. Going off the assumption of his appearance and a few times I've seen him in action, I presume he uses dark magic and he uses plenty of weird wizardry when you face him in Majora's Mask. 3, Smash Ultimate is running a theme, being villains. Between Dark Samus, Ridley, and King K. Rool, almost half of the newcomers in the game so far are villains. Skull Kid would easily fit right there as well. 4, there's a surprising amount of Majora's Mask representation in Ultimate. Between Young Link, Great Bay, The Moon, Termina Field getting remixed, they could wrap a pretty little bow being Skull Kid. 5. The roster's very disproportionate when you look at Fire Emblem having more characters than Zelda. This is more subjective than the other points I made, but Zelda hasn't gotten any newcomers since Toon Link and Brawl, and Fire Emblem's got like 4. We have 7 Fire Emblem characters in Ultimate, yet Zelda's got 6. You can't tell me Fire Emblem is as popular as Zelda. That's not remotely true. Other than that, Skull Kid seems like a solid choice all around. Another one I feel pretty sure about is either Decidueye or Incineroar. There's more talk on Incineroar, specifically because of how it's a wrestler, he'd be suitable to fit. In the anime, Ash is likely going to get one, much like how Pikachu, Mewtwo, and Lucario were largely inspired from the anime and considered for Smash, including their status. Incineroar is likely, but Decidueye is the more popular Pokemon as a whole. It would also bring a more unique Pokemon to the table as well. But here's the only thing that makes me iffy. It's that Smash Ultimate's project plan finished before Smash 4 finished DLC. Somewhere around late 2015 to mid 2016, I would assume is likely when the roster was finalized. The problem is that both Pokemon came out a year after. Incineroar debuted in the Pokemon movie I Choose You mid 2017, so it's closer. And it could be the same case with how Greninja was developed for Smash 4, since Sakurai only had designs and concept art before appearing in X and Y, but it's definitely possible Decidueye was in a similar boat as well. I want Decidueye slightly more, but both Pokemon do have viable chances. It's going to be one or the other, and it seems like DLC might be a better bet than the base game. Call me delusional, like some of you called Ridley and King K. Rool fans years ago, but I'm still holding out hope for Viridi as a new character. People bring up how she's a stage element in Reset Bomb Forest, but people also forget Duck Hunt is a character, stage, and stage element all in one. Dedede's a background element in Dreamland, there's the Toon Link Spirit Train thing with Alfonso, Palkia is both a Pokeball Pokemon and a stage hazard in Spear Pillar, and not only that, that's just an apparition of Viridi, a hologram. Palutena did the same thing in Uprising, as well as Medusa in Hades, only the latter two are literal gargantuans. Viridi is actually the size of a young girl, and there's loads they could do for her moveset. Her forces of nature can revolve around her specials, she has her scythe, her own themed weapons like the Viridi Claws and Viridi Palm, there are more powers in Uprising that can be migrated to a moveset like Palutena's was, or even use some of hers. Her final smash could be a Reset Bomb, or the Lunar Sanctum's laser. She can work as her own fighter. I think she's too disproportionate and potentially light compared to Palutena to be considered an Echo, and Medusa and Hades, despite being villains, seem much better as bosses like Dracula and Rathalos are in Ultimate, especially considering their massive size. Granted, Viridi's also a villain. Palutena's guidances heavily hint at her becoming antagonistic again in the future of Kid Icarus, and considering she was a major part in those guidances and Uprising, she's here to stay and be utilized a lot more than Hades or Medusa seem to. Also, going back to the Mii costume theme, as I mentioned with Gino, Viridi also got a costume as well, which could potentially hint at something here. She seems like a very viable contender, but I'm unaware she's popular enough, which is the only drawback in my eyes. Even if she's not in the base game, I'm holding out hope for DLC at least. Sakurai, please put Viridi in Smash. Banjo-Kazooie, however, I'm more confident in making the cut. Microsoft's CEO is publicly open to the idea of Banjo. He stated it twice. He originated on the Nintendo system, he's a classic icon and very popular. Even if he's with Microsoft now, Microsoft and Nintendo's relationship has been very strong as of late between Rocket League, the online connectivity, and crossplay, Minecraft, and other games and details. It seriously all falls on Sakurai's acceptance or refusal. This would not only be an insane reveal, but a huge way to blow people out of the water with Nintendo and Microsoft's bond. Banjo-Kazooie seems highly possible. And I'm just gonna throw this quick safe one out there. Ken. There's a leaked image of the game that came out with him, showing Pichu, Ivysaur, Pac-Man, and him on Moray Towers. I'm not gonna show it here, link down below. And that's the only leak I think might be real. But even without that leak, it seems way too obvious. He literally is a clone of Ryu in the Street Fighter games, and he's Ryu's best friend. If anything, he's the original Echo, so being his Echo again in Smash seems like a no-brainer, and he is one of the more popular Street Fighter characters. Ken is one of the safest bets you can make, and it's almost a guarantee at this point. Crash Bandicoot I'm a little iffy on. Now that he's on the Switch, he's a viable contender and he's popular, but again, the development thing is another thing to consider. Not really expecting Crash, but I think him as DLC would be more likely. Same could be said for Spyro, who's had a longer history on Nintendo systems. Both candidates are in similar spots at the moment in my opinion. DLC would probably be a thing for them, and that's a decently sized maybe. Speaking of maybes, Bandana Waddle Dee and Chorus Kids I'm even more iffy on, because of most of the aforementioned picks seem more plausible. I'd probably place Karate Joe there instead of Chorus Kids, only because I was told he's the only rhythm heaven character to fight, and his TV is in King K. Rool's trailer with DK posing like him. Unless that's just some random Easter egg, Karate Joe seems more likely based off that alone. I'm not saying they never fit, they definitely could, but I'm not really feeling those guys as I am the other ones, so they're thrown in a gray area. And they could fall under the DLC category too. It's just unprecedented at this point. On the topic of DLC, I think Rex and Pyra as one character and Springman are assuredly DLC. Those guys were conceptualized and their games came out after 2016, so these seem like late extra additions. Both come from very popular games. Sakurai loves Xenoblade 2. Yeah, DLC. Probably gonna happen. There's also talk of Isaac from Golden Sun happening, and Sakurai's tweeted a picture of Rathalos, and the style it's portrayed along with Link and Marth's stances is eerily similar to one of the boss fights from the Golden Sun games. Not only that, a brand new item has been discovered, and this specific weed in a bubble, as much as it looks like the floral sprout from Super Paper Mario, is also specified to be something from Golden Sun Dark Dawn, though that could also be potentially wrong. Smash is no stranger to including items from a one-off franchise and not including a fighter from the same franchise. Lipstick, the Flipper, Unira, the Special Flag, and the Motion Sensor Bomb are all examples of this. With that said, I'd probably say Isaac is a mostly safe bet too. Isaac, while completely absent from Smash 4, he was an assist trophy in Brawl, and he is a relatively frequent request, especially since the little blips and hints of Golden Sun being shown in Smash Ultimate, and it could be a greater hint towards Isaac making an appearance. And this last character has been popping in my head recently. I'm surprisingly shocked at how much support Paper Mario has as a newcomer. Personally, I'm not expecting it, but going around groups, seeing unofficial voting polls made, I see Paper Mario make top 10 on most of them. I was not expecting Paper Mario to get plenty of love. I'm mentioning this simply because of how personally surprised I was, and how it is actually a viable option given enough thought. In a roster where we have 4 mechanically similar Marths and 3 different Links, I think having a third Mario isn't out of the realm of possibility. Paper Mario, however, would absolutely not work as an Echo. He never had Flood, he never had the cape, his most prominent weapon is this hammer. Paper Mario is drastically mechanically different from regular Mario. Knowing how Sakurai loves to inject the best version and the most faithful ideas and moves into these characters, the ideal Paper Mario in Smash would have Thousand Year Door used as a basis. His Smash attacks could revolve around his hammer, his specials would have him call his partners, maybe even between both 64 and Thousand Year Door. Bombette / Bobbery would be his down special, having them walk forward slowly and explode for major damage, almost like a trap setup. His up special would likely be Para Carry, side special would be Vivian's Fiery Jinx, something akin to Zelda's Din's Fire or Palutena's Explosive Flame, and neutral special would likely be Kooper or Koop's Shell Attack. His aerials, dash, and or tilt could be built off the paper transformations, like the paper airplane as his forward air or something, the paper tube as a dash attack, or even the spin jump / ground pound as his down air. The final smash would have to revolve around the special attacks from the game as well. Supernova from TTYD would probably make the most sense since it does a bunch of damage, and the Star Spirits in 64 were more supportive than offensive like the Crystal Stars were. Paper Mario would definitely be a sound addition to Smash Bros. In my book, but of course I have an affinity towards the series as everyone watching this knows. Despite that, I don't see him making the cut. I could see him making it as DLC significantly more for some reason. He definitely is popular, which is slightly hard to believe in the realm of newcomer predictions for Smash, but as much as I'd love to see it, I don't see him being a newcomer anytime soon. I'd love to be wrong though. DLC though could probably be a safer bet. Now before I end this, I'm not saying we're gonna get around 10 more fighters or something like that. No. Sakurai said he's slowing down reveals, and we have a month and a half until the game comes out. If you add the Echoes, which makes sense to do than otherwise, because I mean they did that in Melee and Brawl and Smash 4, we have 74 characters total. That's already a huge amount, and Sakurai said not to expect many newcomers compared to previous Smash games. We have 9 newcomers total so far, 5 of which are new fighters, and 4 are Echoes. I think we're gonna get 3 new fighters and 3 Echoes, being 6 new characters total, adding up the roster to a clean 80 characters. We're gonna hit that number or at least get close. Of the 6 I think are going to be added, the 3 new characters will be Gino, Skull Kid, and Banjo-Kazooie, and the Echoes will be Shadow, Ken, and Dixie Kong. I wanna hold on to that hope for Verity, maybe I'll get lucky, but she seems more like a DLC fighter alongside Rex and Pyra, Springman, Crash, and or Spyro. I'm at least holding on to that tinge for Verity. And that's my final roster prediction for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Did you agree with my list and summaries? Do you have different expectations and hopes? Let me know. Thanks for watching, and stick around for more things Super Smash Bros. Ultimate related, Smash content in general, and other Nintendo videos. Stay super.